My guest this week is Bernard McNally from Yorkshire, who is returning to biking after 20 years. But Bernard hasn't just bought his classic Electroglide, this is the actual Harley-Davidson he enjoyed riding as a lad, and it hasn't been on the road for 2 decades. My mission, should I choose to accept it, is to get the bike running smoothly and safely. Hi Bernard, very nice to meet you. What a fantastic looking bike.
Thank you, yeah.
That's a real piece of sculpture, isn't it?
It truly is, I agree with you.
Yeah, how old is this one then?
I bought it new in 1978.
You bought it new?
Bought it new.
Right.
I rode it for 5 years and for one reason or another I packed it away and I haven't ridden it since 1984.
So she's been off the road for what? 20 years.
20 years now.
20 years. Yeah. You must have missed her terribly.
I've still enjoyed her, you know, she's still been there, but I've missed riding her. I made the mistake of buying a car. That's where I went wrong.
So I guess after 20 years she's probably suffering from 1 or 2 problems, is she?
That's what I think, that's what I'm here for. You tell me what I should look for.
Right. I mean, she does look to be more or less, one piece, but obviously time has taken its toll on 1 or 2 things, and she might just need a little bit of TLC to get her running again.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, wheel her into the shop.
Okay.
Let's have a go. Let's see if we can get her fired up for you, and you might be riding her later on today.
Okay.
Harleys are rather different to work on than most of the bikes, and some may say their design is somewhat, agricultural. But that basic big V-twin has been in production since 1909 and has gone through many evolutions. The Shovelhead which we have here is one of their classic designs, first introduced in 1966, and represents an iconic stage in Harley's development history. These bikes do require a different approach to working on a modern Japanese bike, but the results can be very rewarding and lots of fun. Well, Bernard, here she's on the bench, and I have to say, for a bike that's been stood for 20 years, this is in remarkably good condition. I guess she's been in a woodworking shop, has she?
Exactly, you spotted that.
Right, yeah, I noticed there's lots of signs of sawdust, but at least it's been dry.
Yes,
and that's the important thing, so there's not too many signs of things seized up or missing. 1 or 2 jobs that obviously do need looking at before we start running her on the road, and the first thing that has really sort of grabbed my attention is this rear brake.
Right.
I don't know if there's a story behind that, but obviously there's a brake pipe missing there.
The story is that the original part I found just so difficult to get hold of.
Right.
So I had a copper pipe made up, and it's since snapped.
Right.
So.
Is that one of the reasons why she's been standing for so long?
No, that's not one of the reasons at all. It's simply that it's just the bottom of my priority list.
Yeah, it's just one of those jobs that you intend to get around to.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we can't do something about it now. It's quite an unusual setup on this bike, in that you've got a master cylinder down here for the rear brake, mounted up on these lovely, beautifully elegant sculpted front footboards. The brake pipe, this rigid brake pipe, then should run back to a junction block in the middle of the bike, and then there's a flexible hose that goes from there right up to the caliper on the rear wheel. So this is a brake pipe that somebody's had a go at making but hasn't finished off.
Yeah, that's right.
What I'm going to suggest, Bernard, we can replace that brake pipe with an aftermarket braided stainless steel one, which is be a little bit more expensive, but it's a lot higher spec, and it'll also have that advantage of being flexible. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this one off here. Now that simply is on a gland nut that screws into the cylinder, so that I should be able to just wind out of there. And then what we're going to replace it with is a braided stainless one. I notice you have a braided stainless line on the front brake.
Yeah, I got round to doing that.
Right. And did you find it improved?
It certainly has, yeah.
So what I've done today is I've got a braided steel hose like this one, because I knew you were coming. What we're actually going to do is make this up so it'll fit on to replace your original one. Now these braided steel hoses come in the form of a kit, so you can buy different end fittings to go onto them. And what I've done is first of all cut a piece of brake pipe to length. I've got a replacement fitting there for one end. What I need to do now is put another fitting onto there. This is a fitting as they come, and this is usually what you do in a workshop, because it does need a little bit of care to make sure they go together correctly. I've trimmed the end of the brake pipe down there, and as that fitting goes in, that brass olive, can you see that olive?
Yes.
Just sits into there like that. That gland nut then slides over the top of that and screws onto there, and that's what forms the hydraulic seal. So I now need 2 spanners to tighten that up, and hopefully I've got the right ones to hand. There we go, that's one of them, and the other one I think should be 1/2 inch. Of course these are all imperial sizes because it's an American bike and American fitting. So all I do now is tighten that up, and what that's doing is compressing that brass olive inside the fitting, because that hose obviously has to hold quite a lot of hydraulic pressure. When you stamp your foot on the brakes in a panic, then that's where all the pressure is inside there, so that needs nipping up quite tight. Now, even once these are on the bike and the brake's working correctly, what I'd want to do is check that. Certainly the first few hundred miles, keep having a look at it and make sure there's no sign of any brake fluid seeping out of there. If there is, it needs taking apart and another seal making. It's got to be absolutely pressure tight as that one. The first thing I noticed looking over Bernard's Harley was the rear brake pipe, which seemed to be in a very sorry state. The original setup had a rigid pipe going to a union block partway down the bike, and this rigid brake pipe was damaged and had been bodged. What we decided to do was to fit a new braided steel hose which is flexible and will replace the rigid original. This should make a radical improvement. So what we're going to do now is fit the brake pipe on. Do you want to have a go at this?
No.
Brave man. I hope you are going to get your hands dirty on this bike at some point, Bernard. If I pop that down into there like that union, as long as they've supplied us with the right thread, which I'm sure they have, that should wind straight down into there and it'll seal with the right size spanner and it'll seal into the original mounting. So there we go. Now this is of course deviating from standard, but it's not unusual to fit braided stainless pipes as aftermarket accessories onto bikes like this. I'm sure it won't detract from the value of the bike. Before I nip it up finally though, what I want to do is route it through the bike and we'll hook it up into the brake junction block at the back. Because if I tighten that up and then we find we have to do this with it, we can twist the thing round. One great advantage of these is they all swivel around. So you can get it all hooked up and then position it as you want it. So what I'm going to do now is feed the brake pipe through here. Now it's quite important of course that it doesn't touch on the exhaust pipe there, because if it does, and the engine's running, then that's going to get hot and it's going to melt the brake pipe, and that obviously you don't want to happen. So what we've got there is a mounting, and that brake pipe's going to clip into there, and that'll keep it nice and tidy and tucked out of the way. Right, all that remains to be done now on this rear brake line, now we've got it all hooked up, I'll just make sure that that's running true, and then I'll nip the unions up, let's put some brake fluid in, and let's bleed the brake, and hopefully that's one problem solved.
Good.
Okay. And so to recap, the next part of the job was to hook up the union block in the midsection of the bike. This junction not only serves to connect the two halves of the brake line together, but it also has a hydraulic switch which controls the rear stoplight. Right, so if I slacken this bleed nipple off now, and if you pump that pedal, there we go. As Bernard's pumping the pedal, there's nice fresh fluid coming all the way through the system. And all we do is pump that until all those air bubbles disappear, and then the brake's fully bled, and the bike should be safe for test drive, as long as we can get it running. So what made you choose a Harley when you first bought that, Bernard? Because there must have been any other number of bikes you could have had for the same kind of money or even less.
Well, it's a beautiful thing to start off with. The sound it makes, big attraction, big draw. 1200 cc's of beautiful power.
Okay, shall we pop back and have another look and see what we can do to get it back on the road then?
Okay, let's do that.
Right, what we've done now is run some charge into the battery, Bernard, so let's have a go at connecting the electrics up and see if there's any sign of life.
Okay.
And this is, it's quite a tricky job fitting this battery, really, isn't it?
It is.
We've got, I always start by connecting up the positive side first, and then the negative second, and that's to avoid getting any kind of sparks or short circuits. Particularly on this bike, we've got lots of leads which are rather close to the engine. And well, we should be doing a little bit of polishing in amongst as well. She's starting to clean up a little bit. Do you think you'll ever clean this one up and restore her back to her original? I'm
open to restore her, yeah. I want to spend as little time as possible polishing. I've had enough of that over the years.
This is a bike for riding then?
Well, yeah.
But am I right in thinking you were talking about maybe powder coating the frame? And
yeah, a thorough job. I want to do a thorough job once, and once it's done, start to look after it, which is what I didn't do last time.
Right. But it looks like nothing's really gone terminal, has it?
No.
There's a little bit of corrosion on the wheels. But
yeah, new stainless steel spokes there. That should be all right.
Right. Now these two leads at the back are both earth leads, so they need to be connected. And of course you can get... Did you say you've got new stainless steel
I've got
spokes?
the spokes, yeah. It's just a case of getting the wheels rebuilt.
And you can still buy new wheel rims, of course.
Well, I think I'm going to powder coat the wheel rims. I quite fancy them black.
Right. So it's going to be a little bit of a customising job then, is it?
Very mild custom.
Right. Can I ask you to just reach in there with a sponge? See if you can tighten that bolt.
Yeah.
Right, and then what we've got to do next, to secure this battery, there's a top cover goes on, but we have the original chrome trim
Yeah.
to go on there. So can I just take that off you
Please
while...
do, yeah.
Okay, and this is quite a tricky little piece of kit to engage, I believe, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Do you want me to show you how to do it?
Have we got that bolted up? Let's just make sure the terminals are right. Have you got the right spanner?
I think this is the right one now.
Okay. And of course, with any bike, you would always connect the positive terminal first and then the negative terminal. And it's simply to avoid any risk of getting short circuits when wires are flailing around loose as you're working on the bike.
Okay, that's a good earth, I think.
Okay, that looks sound. Right, and this cover goes on before the top one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have the advantage of me here, Bernard.
Okay,
You've done this before.
Yeah, if you can pull the kickstart back for me.
Okay. So that, that engine feels to have some good compression. Are your leads okay there?
Yeah, let's thread this in carefully.
Nice.
It's almost there.
These wires should be inside that cover, shouldn't they?
Yeah.
Not outside.
No, outside. Actually.
Should be outside, okay.
Yeah.
Let's just... Right, your battery breather pipe is inside.
Mm-hmm. Fiddle, fiddle.
Okay. And it's like anything that's specially made for it will only go on with one particular way, won't it?
That's right.
It's a massive battery, isn't it, by bike standards?
It's enormous.
Yeah, because it's a great big engine, it'll need lots and lots of crank to spin it over. You want me to hold that strap?
Could you do that? Just see where it fits, yeah.
Yeah, I see it. Just move the top over, it needs to sit on top of this cover.
Okay.
There, does it? I'm not sure, is that on correctly, Bernard?
That's good enough, Rod.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I see, that whole strap just holds the entire thing up.
That's it. Let's slacken this off.
I think this looks marvellous, this great big chrome battery housing that hung off the side. Am I right in thinking it's one of your less favoured styles?
It is. It's the one part of the bike that I'm not happy with.
Right.
The shape of this cover.
So, we've got oil in the bike,
Yes.
we've got fuel in the bike, we've got fresh petrol in there, and we've now got some electrical power in here. Let's turn this on, this beautiful Gothic switch up here. We just flick that on. Yep. And we've got some signs of life in the electrical system. So, ready for the big start-up?
Yeah.
And, well, put back in part 2 to see if it runs.